I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet here with the dude back in action and the fourth member, Guy Goldstein. It's great to see you, Guy. It's great to see you, dude.
It's good to be back.
Great to finally meet you.
It's great to finally be on with Guy.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because you're right. I mean, we're getting tons of compliments from a lot of people about Guy Goldstein, and you called me immediately, I think on Friday or whenever you heard his first one of the shows, and you were like, this guy is great. And, Guy is great. So anyway, you all are listening to the Daily Cheat Sheet. You can follow us on Rumble. Most days we go live about 1:30 in the afternoon Pacific time. And now, thanks to David, we have a lot of YouTube short clips. So it's exciting and they're great. Great job, Dave. And enough about ourselves. Let's get to the stories. Mend in Minnesota right now. Obviously, in Minnesota, they're going to be, the left is trying to use, this is their line in the sand for the midterms. This will be the moment where they're fundraising off of this and everything like that. Gratefully, it's 10 months before the midterms, and I don't think they were counting on Don Lemon leading a mob
Into a church.
into a church attacking a pastor. So if I were the Republicans, this would be a clip and clips I run every night, everywhere possible for the next 10 months. And simply say choose.
It should also be clips of the people and the crimes that they've committed and the ones that are being apprehended. That's it.
100%.
Here's whatever, something Gomez. He raped the 13-year-old. We got him. He's going to go to jail in some other country, and then that's it. We'll never see him again. That type of stuff. Take the victims and just play those stories. We talked about this offline a bit, but they need to take those stories and run with it. It's about the victims. These insane people that are defending their cities against ICE or whatever they're calling it are really defending pedophiles and ignoring all the victims.
Listen, I agree with you 100%, and obviously that's something I've been saying, but there's something optically, especially to the Black community, especially evangelicals,
we put it out the other day.
To an attack on a church.
Attack on a church is huge, but also there was a Black girl that was raped, strangled, and murdered and thrown off a bridge. Beautiful Black girl. There's Black Twitters talking about it, but BLM is silent about it. So yes, run with these stories. Talk about the innocent kids that are being killed on a daily basis by these illegal maniacs that Biden administration led into the country.
And by the way, I think that one of the issues that you're going to be running into is the left have dehumanized both sides of this. They've dehumanized the victims and they've dehumanized ICE, right? One of the things that keeps coming back is people. Now, ICE's uniforms are particularly dehumanizing for a reason, right? And again, coming from a country with a lot of unrest, you understand it's to protect the officers. But at the same time, that anonymity dehumanizes them. And so there does need to be an initiative to rehumanize also on the right. Right. I think it's too easy to us to assume that our kids are also seeing the world the way we see it. We need to bring up the clarity of the victims. We need to bring clarity to the people who are actually doing this, to the patriots who do this and put their lives at risk to protect the country. And then you can put a spotlight on the people that are actually standing in the way. And I think when you start to tell more stories, when you start to really say, these people have a track record of contributing nothing but harassing police officers in X, Y, and Z situations. They move from cause to cause, from issue to issue. It's hard for them right now. Like you have to empathize with them at the moment. Do they go out and support the Ayatollahs? Do they go out and support the pedophiles, or do they go out and support the Palestinian terrorists? Like who are they going to be rooting for right now? We don't have to worry about that. We've got one team to support.
They should repurpose the old, hi, I'm a Mac, I'm a PC commercials and just have it, hi, I'm an ICE agent. I'm a data 4 and I'm trying to protect my community. And then you have the next guy get up and goes, I'm a Venezuelan Trinidad rapist. I like raping 12-year-olds. And then you say, all right, choose which one.
By the way, that's really brilliant because you don't have to, you could just put his mugshot up and use AI over.
Yeah, the talk. It's great.
Use the AI voice. And I want to congratulate Guy for saying Zed for the first time on this program. So that is a new one to the Daily Cheat Sheet. But I want to get back to this Don Lemon thing because they are going to try him under the KKK laws and under the KKK statutes. meant, I think, is really sort of ironic and funny, but good. One of these people has to go to jail. Obviously, this was a publicity stunt. He's got no career at this moment, and you
That, and
cannot
that,
do it.
but that's the fear. The fear is that they're actually going to give this guy the spotlight that he so desperately wants. Nobody cares about Don Lemon anymore. The guy's on a street corner. He went from CNN on his high, pompous throne to standing on a street corner in Minnesota with his microphone that says Don Lemon on it. And he's like, you're trying to be a street reporter. So, charging him, one is I don't think the charges will stick because he didn't barge into the church with them. He was just with them ahead of time. He knew what they were doing.
Yeah, he was the FBI agents on the ground
So you ain't- yeah.
January 6th.
Yeah. See, he was there. He knew what they were doing, and then they went and did it. I don't know how you charge him with that, but they should be doing mass charges against all these people that are breaking the law, that are violating people's civil rights, that are storming churches, beating up. That guy Jake Lang got beat the crap out of him and stabbed at a anti-ICE protest. He was like the only pro-ICE guy there, and the mob. There wasn't a cop in sight. I'm surprised he's still alive, but you see the mob just eat him. He just gets lost in that mob, and then they spit him out, and then they stabbed him, and there's blood coming out of his head. And mainstream media is not reporting that. They're saying, far right activist gets
Well, of
chased
course,
away.
of course.
I promise you, this is how they phrase it. Far right activist gets chased away from anti-ICE protest. That's not at all what happened. That is not. It was a independent journalist got the crap beaten out of him and stabbed by these anti-ICE lunatics.
Yeah, he got Andy Node. But Guy, there's also this thing where there's an ICE officer. Listen. Again, every time a cop opens up a window in a car, on a traffic stop, his life he may never, that might be it for the cop. We often forget about that little thing. An ICE officer is going to arrest a pedophile, Venezuelan pedophile, right? And he's not a pedophile, but like a sex, whatever. There's no
They're
word.
pedophiles, sex offenders, all of it. It's the same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. But I mean, this guy specifically, just like the rest of them. I mean, not saying there's levels of pedophilia because there aren't, but these guys are monsters. So are all pedophiles, for the record. But Guy, and you see the ICE officer saying, "We got to get him." You're looking like, it's like this reality is distorted. We're living in two. I mean, we're in a time, obviously, since Trump, where there's two different views of things. Everything is viewed so differently. I've never seen it pre-Trump.
Well, so for starters, it's a different moral universe, right? I saw the video and you hear the officer say, "I'm coming to arrest a sex offender," right? To any person that still has any semblance of morality, when a law enforcement officer tells you that, like, what value do you have from standing in the way? I can understand, perfectly innocent, Venezuelan abuela, someone sort of just doing the grocery shopping and a bunch of jackboot thugs come and try to accost her. People are going to say, "Oh, this is not okay." But I'm trying to arrest a sex offender. Like, that should be triggering. Anybody that's trying to defend the said sex offender has to have a good, long, hard look in the mirror, right?
Well, yes, but actually, these people that we're talking about, and I'm talking about the far left, they're the ones that are trying to rebrand sex offenders as minor attracted people. So they don't even see them as. Don't even get me started. I mean, do
And
these
this is
people
a
not
long.
have children?
It's a long-standing thing in sort of post-Marxist leftists, the philosophy on the left. The Foucault is notoriously for abolishing the age of consent in France, and he had his adventures in Algeria, and it's a recurring theme. But I don't think I think at the structural level that's true. I think that a lot of these people on the ground, and again, this is one of those places where I try to come back to what's motivating the people on the ground, because not everybody understands the philosophy they've signed on to. Not everybody understands the ideology. When you're a mother of 3 and you decide that you're going to go out and try to stop ICE from arresting, deporting immigrants, you think
Illegal
you're doing the
immigrant.
right thing, right? The fact that these people are not immigrants, they're illegal aliens who have broken into the country, who have also committed further crimes, which is the reason that they're the ones being targeted. That's not. I would hope that that's not part of the way that those people are processing this, because if they are, then you have a much bigger problem.
Well, we
And
do, Guy, to your point, it's what I said, man, we do have a much bigger problem. This isn't, Guy, you're 100% correct. 11 years ago, 12 years ago. Think about the things we've been discussing since Trump got off the escalator. We've been discussing boys and girls sports. We've been discussing some of the most, transitioning children. We've been discussing things that 11 years ago people would have men looked at you and said, "No, that's never going to be a political issue." Like nobody's going to be like saying people in prison should be allowed to have sex changes and that person will be running for president, man. So we do live in a different reality. And I've always said we have to start naming things like PT, like pre-Trump. Because man, it's totally, the world is off. We've lost our way.
it's so funny. There's a bunch of videos circulating on X of Bill Clinton talking about getting rid of illegal aliens, whether they committed a crime or not, says Clinton. He goes, they broke the law by coming into this country illegally, and they helped nobody, especially not the people that are most struggling to put food on the table, because these guys come in and they take jobs and they take opportunities and they suck up resources. They put strain on social programs like hospitals, police departments, fire, all of that stuff. And they're not contributing. They don't belong here. You got to put your citizens first. That was Bill Clinton. Bernie Sanders. There's a video of retarded Bernie, the mentally deranged senator from Vermont, saying the exact same thing. And of course, Obama. Obama was the deporter in chief, and he deported more people. Do you know that over 50 people died at the hands of ICE agents under Obama? 50 people. We haven't heard a single peep about it. You don't know the name of any one of them because it wasn't Trump. It's kind of like the same thing with the Middle East. Iran just killed 20,000 innocent protesters. You don't hear a word because it wasn't the Jews. It wasn't Israel. Here, same thing applies. When it's not Trump, nobody cares. Nobody gives a damn. But as soon as there's some fat, demented white lady who decides to ram a police officer with her car and gets herself shot, everybody knows her name.
As you can see, Guy, men doesn't hold back.
I'm all for it. And I was going to say, and I think I agree with you entirely. And I agree with what you said earlier, Judah. And I think that the one thing that I am sort of coming to, and I think we've had this conversation before, is this isn't a political debate.
It
This is
shouldn't be.
sectarian. This is a sectarian debate. We had a discussion about this terminology before. These are the mother of three will go and get herself killed trying to protect the pedophile because he's on her tribe supports his tribe. That's no longer about politics. That's no longer about reasoning and sense making. And what you're seeing in Minnesota looks like the sort of sectarian violence that you see in places like Somalia, in places like Syria, in places like Iran, right? It no longer looks like law and order in a political debate. It's not a political protest. It's not placards, it's bodies. People are using their bodies to intervene. They're not using their words anymore, right? And I think that's the distinction I'm trying to drive home. This is no longer a political conversation. And the eyes of the world are on Minnesota, which is a state which nobody ever cared about until recently. Like even the people in Minnesota largely didn't care about it, but they're on Minnesota because you're seeing what it looks like when the most advanced Western country in the world begins to experience a phenomenon that belongs to the third world. How's it going to react? And the truth is, there's only one thing that America can do, and it's not a question of Trump or whoever comes after Trump, Marco Rubio, God willing, or anyone else, Democrat, Republican. It's a question of the cohesion of the United States and it remaining a political debate.
Well said. I want to move on, though. Men, with Trump putting together this board of peace, it's sort of like calling the protesters in Minnesota, the left calling them peaceful protests, right? He's assembling, as I say, the murderer's row, literally in this case, the murderer's row of the board of peace. You have Qatar, Turkey, and Russia pretty much on the board of peace. And I happen to think this is one of those moves, and, I named the show Never Judge Trump in the Moment. You put all of your enemies in one room, and that's what we're sort of witnessing. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I doubt he does either. But this is one of those situations where I'm not going to, like, a lot of people are freaking out about this. Obviously, there's a component we could talk about with Israel in regards to Israel with Turkey and Qatar, going into parts of Israel with troops. Total aside from that, in this case, Mend, I actually think it's sort of an ingenious move. Is you're cutting out the United Nations, as Guy said about Minnesota, the 180 countries that don't matter, and you're putting in like the 20 countries that do matter.
Yeah, so this is the United Nations. This is a take on the United Nations Security Council. So just bypass the Security Council. Problem is that he's inviting Qatar, Turkey, and Russia. So, and anyone else who wants to pledge $1 billion.
But that's after 3 years. That's after 3 years. I think you get your first 3
The
years are
first 3
free.
years are free.
Are free.
The first
Right.
What a bargain. What a bargain.
But do you get what I'm saying?
Well, I
is
think
the-
I think it's funny they invited Russia because Russia doesn't have $1 billion to pay. So they're out of the table. Turkey
Take a
probably
turn
doesn't
on
have it
either.
either, but Qatar will pay for both. So you get Turkey and Qatar 2 for 1.
This is like that James Bond movie. Remember like Casino Royale when he's like sitting at the table playing No Limit Hold'em with like all the, some of these villain, that villain. And I feel like Trump's just putting a bunch of people in a room and saying, I'm the head villain in charge.
Well, there's
And
a couple of things to this. Sorry for cutting you off. One is he's looking at this from a deal-making perspective. And he goes, listen, if we need to have Russia in the room and we need to have Qatar in the room, and we've been getting things done when we get in the room with these people, let's get them all in a room. Let's have this big room. We bypass the UN, we get things done. The problem with all of this is that what we're seeing happening in Syria right now, they forced a surrender by the forces that were opposing Giuliani. Guy, do you know which grouping exactly it is? It's
SDF,
the
the Syrian
Kurds, right? The
Democratic
SDF.
Forces.
So the
well,
Kurdish,
what is the F? I think Guy will know what the SDF stands for. That's how much faith I have in him.
So the Syrian Democratic Forces were basically the Kurdish resistance.
That's why we have Guy Goldstein on this show.
well, they have 40 million people spread out across Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. The Turkish hate them. They're the biggest foes of the Kurdish people. And the Turkish government, Turkey sent in tanks, fighters, soldiers from everywhere. They brought these guys in from Uzbekistan and the Uyghurs from
Turkmenistan.
China. You see Asian people from the Uyghur region in China in Syria attacking the Kurds. How does that happen?
They also have Turkish, and they're also armed. The Syrian, so Al-Jalani's forces are armed
The
with
Giuliani
Turkish
forces.
equipment.
And what's happened is that the Kurds were watching. They were the overseers of the biggest prisons holding ISIS fighters. And now it's all over X. They are releasing them in mass. So you talk about everything that we've done. Why would Trump go along with this? Because he got his arm twisted. He got his ear twisted by Tom Barrack, who's advocating on behalf of Turkey and Qatar. And this is what they want. Turkey and Qatar want ISIS. They want Hamas and Hezbollah to be empowered. We want to see the destruction of Israel. They're still doing it. When we talked about Trump making deals with Qatar, we said at that time, if Qatar really changed their ways, then we will see it in Al Jazeera. And to this day, Al Jazeera is putting out hit pieces on the US and hit pieces on Israel till this day, talking genocide and all this other nonsense. So they have not changed their ways. Why would Israel allow them anywhere near Gaza? Anywhere near Gaza? And Trump forcing it down their throats is a huge betrayal. One, to the Kurdish people. The Kurdish people were just betrayed in a massive way. They are being slaughtered in Syria. I saw a video of just a house full of Kurds that were beheaded.
The Kurds, who it's important to point out, the SDF was supported by the United States in opposition to the Assad regime as a foothold in Syria.
And ISIS. They fought ISIS and Assad.
Right. Yeah. So it's important to understand this was a US-backed militia or a resistance force that after the collapse of Syria actually managed to secure a relatively significant territorial part of what is effectively Syrian Kurdistan, or the Kurdish region of Syria. They protected the Kurds from the sectarian violence that followed Al-Jalani's conquest of Syria to some extent.
It's also
now
important.
they're being
Go ahead.
And now they're being overrun at a time, by the way, where the broader Kurdish national defense, particularly the Iraqi Kurds, are preoccupied with Iran, right? Because all of these things are connected. So the Kurdish region in Iran is a serious target for the Iranian regime to suppress. And so the Kurds in Iraq, who actually have some autonomy, were helping defend their Kurdish brothers and sisters in Iran, or looking in the other direction, as the Turks might have called it before they decided that this was the time to invade in Syria. So it's all connected. It's this in particular really hurts because it feels like, and it feels like a betrayal not only of the Kurds, but of what at least someone outside of realpolitik who looks at America as an ideal rather than just a country. It feels like a violation of that. And I'm not saying that we should judge it immediately. We need to keep an eye on things and understand what's going on. But the immediate sense of it feels very, very wrong.
Absolutely agreed. And it's important to note why the Turkish are opposed to the Kurds getting independence anywhere, not just in Turkey. They are afraid there's 40 million Kurds spread out in Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. And they are yearning for independence. They are dying to just be free. They are the closest thing to a democracy, to a nation with equal rights for men and women. Women are fearless fighters in their army. I mean, they are everything that is the opposite of ISIS. And they've been yearning for independence. The Turkish people, Turkish government has been violently suppressing them for years. And if they saw Kurds establish any kind of independence in Syria, they thought it was a threat to them because their Kurds would want independence as well. So they sent tons of military hardware and fighters into Syria to squash the Kurds. Now, up until recently, the Jolani government was talking about some sort of framework for peace with the Kurds, where the Kurds wouldn't oppose them. There was a lot of rights that they were going to be given. All of that is out the window today. So what happened was Turkey sent in an overwhelming force to crush the Kurds. The Kurds were backed into a corner. They were being slaughtered. And the only thing they could do was absolute surrender, meaning they're not going to be rolled into the Syrian military as a unit. They could join up as independents. They're being slaughtered anyway, so I don't know why they would want to join that military. You see fearless Kurdish fighters fighting to the last bullet, and then they use the last bullet on themselves. I've seen videos of that. A Kurdish sniper girl. She took out a ton of these, Jolani ISIS guys, and then she ran out of ammunition. They were coming in. She had one bullet and just used it on herself, and then you see them throwing her off a balcony.
And one thing, and just to circle back to something that we touched on, the ISIS prisoners that are being released, right? This isn't because the Kurds have decided, let's free the prisoners. It's a liberation day, right? The Syrians are liberating the prisons. They're freeing the prisoners. These ISIS soldiers are going to get rolled right up into the Syrian army. Right, these are reinforcements for the.
No,
These
they're
are
loyal to Jolani. Explain. Remember, Jolani is ISIS. Let's not forget that.
Jolani is Al Qaeda, but jihadis tend to have some flexibility with which particular team they play for, but they don't. But they're willing to play for the team. So this is not just letting ISIS terrorists out; it's putting them back on the board on the side that is now somehow considered America's ally.
Okay, so I want to wrap this up a little bit, but I want to ask you both a question about this because, there are going to be a lot of people that are listening to this show. You guys have brilliant knowledge on what's going on the ground over there. How does that matter to Americans? Why should this matter to Americans? And you go first.
All right. So number one is reputation. We've absolutely, as it appears now, Guy was really wise in saying we probably shouldn't jump to conclusions at this point, but
that's what I named the show, that we shouldn't jump to conclusions, but go on.
Thank you, Judah. It appears that we've betrayed our allies. We've betrayed the people that have lost over 15,000 fighters fighting ISIS on our behalf. Why are we fighting ISIS? Because ISIS wants to kill us. I mean, they've come here and they've done stuff. They've been multiple attacks, from the Pulse nightclub attack, and there's tons of ISIS attacks that have happened here in the United States. ISIS wants to kill everything that is not their version of Islam. So, the difference between ISIS and Al Qaeda is not whether or not they want to kill us. It's just in what order they're going to kill us.
Mode of transport.
The Christians, right? Yeah, one wants to kill the Christians first, the other one wants to kill the Jews first, and the Christians second. It's just shuffling the deck chairs. So
yeah, on the Titanic. But Guy, what would you say to Americans that are listening to this?
I think that it's for me, it's three things. One, from a security perspective, the world becomes more dangerous for American soldiers in the region first and foremost, but for American civilians in the world more broadly. ISIS have habits of doing things that are a little bit less obvious. That kidnappings and terrorism are their sort of trade, right? It puts Americans anywhere in the world at risk, particularly after we've seen Biden negotiating for the 6 hostages out of Iran, which also incentivizes hostage taking. The world is a more dangerous place for Americans in that if with this happening. The second thing is it complicates any plan for peace in the region. Part of what we were promised by Trump, part of Trump's big vision for the world was creating a more stable world, and this does the opposite of that, right? There was a play with Al-Jilani that said maybe he can be reformed. The fact that he's gone and unleashed hell on the Kurds, the fact that he's released thousands of ISIS fighters who are now going to join his ranks, and that is going to destabilize a region which is always on act away from a complete collapse. And I think the third is it brings us back to that question that we always have to talk about who do we want to be as Americans? I mean, again, the Kurds have been begging for freedom for a very long time and no one listens. Finally, somebody listened, that someone was America. That's one of those flag waving moments where you say, America. Like that's the when you say look at what we stand for. And then all of a sudden to pull back and say, it's not in our interest anymore. It raises a lot of questions about who America is as an ally. And it brings us back to that famous Kissinger quote, which I'm always loath to bring up, but it's always important to remember, which is that it's dangerous to be America's enemy, but it's fatal to be America's friend.
Well said. I really want to thank you both for that. I thought you were dynamite doing that. I'm learning a lot today. But just so it is important to know, Jelani was both part of IC before it became ISIS and Al Qaeda. He broke off, I believe, after Baghdadi was killed, and that that was his
I think it
new
was
image.
before Baghdadi was killed, but he did break away and wanted to do his own version. I forgot what it was called. It was like the
rebranding. Yeah, the rebranding of Jelani.
What was it?
Hezbollah to here.
Sorry, say that one more time.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's all right.
We can just call it Jelani's ISIS. It'll be
right. Okay, but I'm really glad you guys did that because listen, this is like really confusing for Americans. It's obviously we're America first, and I think it's important what you guys both brought up because it is America first. It's our security and it's our safety, and everything Trump is really trying to do, whether it be Greenland or whatever else he's trying to do, is protect our hemisphere.
We're seeing, sorry, we've said this before, but we're seeing all roads lead back to Qatar. If you want to know why Syria is a mess right now, Qatar and Turkey. You want to know why the Kurds are getting their asses kicked and completely sidelined? Qatar and Turkey. You want to know why Hamas is not dead? Qatar and Turkey. Everything that we're seeing is Qatar and Turkey, and I don't understand why this administration.
I didn't think you would say. I didn't think, by the way, you were going to say Barrack. I thought you were going to say Witkoff. I get the Barrack thing. I don't think he trusts Barrack's voice on this as much as he tries. I think Steve Witkoff really is the devil in the details in so much of what we're witnessing. But I want to move on, though. Guy, final. Yeah, so you want to say something?
Well, I just want to add to what Mend is saying. When you say Qatar and Turkey, it's very important to recognize what you're calling out, which is the Muslim Brotherhood. Qatar is the mouthpiece of the Muslim Brotherhood. Turkey is the main home of the Muslim Brotherhood. And why that's relevant to America is things like the EPIC project in Plano, Texas, or East Texas, right? The Muslim Brotherhood has a documented agenda of conquering the West. The Muslim Brotherhood has a documented plan of how they're going to essentially colonize America. This is not conspiracy. It's documents that are available for anyone that wants to look up the Muslim Brotherhood 1992 memorandum. I believe it outlines what they're planning. And when you see these groups who want to set up Islamic communes in Texas, right, that's part of the same axis. When you say Qatar,
that's like Turkey, an oxymoron, by the way, an Islamic commune. But go on.
So sorry, my train of thought. When you say Qatar and Turkey, you have to understand that it's Qatar and Turkey and CARE and EPIC in Plano, Texas, and it's groups that are probably active on the ground in Minnesota. I haven't dug into this, but if we look, we'll find them. These are groups that have reach inside the United States, and by empowering them in the Middle East, you're just going to empower them in the United States.
Well said, both of you, and I'm sure Dearborn, you could include Dearborn, Michigan in the same grouping of people. Listen, this is going on all over America. People want to acknowledge it or not. look at, obviously, we brought up the mayor of New York. You look at just, this is not a one off. I want to move on, though, to Iran, man. I found it extremely, listen, I said this to you on the phone. We still don't know what Trump is going to do, but on a daily basis, obviously, they're still executing, they're still murdering. I think that there are conflicting reports about that 26-year-old kid that was killed. Many reports say he is dead, obviously. And Trump made a promise. And I don't know when or if he's going to fulfill that promise, but it will leave a stain on his on his foreign policy legacy if he does not act on Iran. And you know me, biggest Trump supporter. I've come out and said he's the greatest foreign policy president of my lifetime. But at a certain point, if he does not back up his words on Iran, it'll go to his grave.
So I have a prediction. Trump is going to take action against Iran, but I think that what's happening in Syria with Jolani and the Kurds is a bigger stain on his reputation than whether or not he steps up for the people of Iran. These are people that fought for us, and they are being hung out to dry. They're being slaughtered. You're seeing their girls being kidnapped by these Julani ISIS guys. It is horrible and gut-wrenching. As far as Iran goes, Iran government official admitted 5,000 deaths, which means that it's probably closer to 25,000. You're seeing videos on X of people that have the patches from being in the hospital. They have the intubator still sticking out of their nose. They've got all kinds of other bandages on their torsos, but they're all shot in the head. It means that the Hezbollah guys, Iran flew in plane loads of Hezbollah guys. So their IRGC guys, backed up by the Hezbollah guys, went into the hospitals knowing that injured protesters were going to be there and then executed them in their hospital beds. It is gut-wrenching. It is horrible what's going on there. I think when Trump talked, he probably spoke a little bit too soon when he said help is on the way. Everything else was great, but help is on the way. When your battleships are a week away, it's a bad move to say help is on the way, knowing that it's going to take you at least a week to get your assets into place, which is what they need to defend the entire region when Iran starts retaliating after they do this. And the other thing is that the word that we're hearing is that Trump wants to get it done in one shot this time. Send the boys in, let the Israelis go in, do what you got to do, take out all of their their missiles and weapons that they could do to threaten the region, really harm the regime, probably take out Khomeini and some other top leaders, and then let the Iranians sort it out. We're not going to send boots in. We're not going to, put boots on the ground. But there's also a good chance that Iran falls into sectarian violence. You have Muqtada al-Sadr next door in Iraq with his militia. They could storm across the border and wreak havoc in Iran next. I believe that they're Shias. So it's not so clear cut as to what the day after in Iran is going to look like. But it is pretty obvious that that regime does need to pay a price for the carnage that they just caused on their own citizens.
Well said. And to add to his point, Guy, they did have I find this sort of very interesting that they had that somebody hacked their internet for about 10 minutes in Iran.
A national
And
broadcaster.
The TVs.
the
TV.
national broadcaster hacked in. I'm not going to say who we might think it might be, but do you still think an attack is imminent? Do you think Trump is going to follow through on this?
So I think there's a couple of things. I think, first of all, there is a disconnect between, I think we've discussed this before, but Venezuela was an outlier situation, right? The fact that America could go in, pluck the president of Venezuela out and be like, yep, thanks, we're done here now. It is a historical absurdity. You can't look at that as a pattern. The idea that there's a one and done solution for a regime that's been bunkering down for 50 years, planning, whose nature is to live in pure paranoia, not only of their own citizens coming for them, but of the Israelis, of the Americans, right? They have they have a network of facilities that is unimaginably well protected because they're constantly afraid that they're going to come under attack. Iran isn't going to be a one and done. There is no solution that I think anybody can put on the table that gives you a magic bullet the way that you can, that you can just pluck one particular person out of the mix or even a whole series of people out of the mix. Having said that, the inaction is dangerous in and of itself. And I think that's part of the challenge that we now have. I actually heard that J.D. Vance was arguing that America has to do something because they can't be seen as saying something and they're not out and not doing something, which puts me in an interesting position because I usually disagree with everything Vance says. but in this case, he's right. The fact is, if America shows weakness again, the whole region comes apart. The other fact is that there's a pattern that we're seeing, and that pattern is the Kurds in Syria, Israel on the board of peace, Iranians in Iran, America making promises to allies and ending up finding solutions that don't necessarily sound like the promises they made. That's not a pattern America can afford in a world that is asking the question of who's going to be leading the next century, right?
Well, yeah, listen, I think that's perfectly said. I also think, man, it's in both of you, it's really important to remember that we don't know who the next president's going to be, and all of these board of peace, everything, just like we pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords or whatever they're called, or we pulled out of the Iran deal with that Obama made. Whoever comes next could easily pull out of the same thing. So these are extremely delicate times and dangerous times because we don't know who's next up.
Which is why he needs to get as much done and as much codified now and not rule through executive action, because those things could just be overturned. We've been saying this for a long time. We need Congress to actually act and get some things passed. The Board of Peace won't mean anything if they can't actually bring about peace.
Well, that's why I think it's a joke. I honest to God, I really don't think he's thinking that world peace will be achieved through this through this board of peace.
It sounds like something that was, pitched in a smoke-filled cigar room.
No, in a Saturday Night Live skit.
That sounds great. Yeah, the Board of Peace. But
Yeah.
what are you talking about? What needs to be done in Gaza to make that war end? Hamas needs to surrender. You need to get rid of all the crazy indoctrination. You need to stop telling those people that the land is all theirs and one day they're going to get it. That's what the Palestinian Authority still teaches their kids. This is all your land. The Jews came from Europe. Like these blatant lies. So if they can't do that, and it's a really easy fix right now, you give Hamas 48 hours, disarm completely, or we're letting the Israelis go back in. Period. End of story. That's what's going to happen. We're going to move your goddamn tent cities to some other part of that crap hole area that you're in. You're going to be living in the cold and the wind again for another few months while these guys fight it out. Is that what you want? Hamas wants that, but the people of Gaza don't. And the people of Gaza would probably revolt at that point if they knew that there was 48-hour deadline for another war. They need to do a media blackout again, get rid of BBC and all these organizations that just prop up the insane people in Gaza that believe they're winning the war as they're living in tents and rubble. And you could end this thing. A board of peace is not going to end it. So what is the point of this board of peace? He thinks, we could expand to other wars, Ukraine and Venezuela. I don't hold out much hope for that. As far as the Iranian protests that we were just talking about, the Iranian state TV were hacked and they played videos of Reza Pahlavi, the Shah's son, and he was showing videos of the protests, of what was going on, which is something that the Iranian regime was desperately trying to hide, and to the point where they were showing videos.
They played part of his speech in which he was actually calling the Iranian people to rise up. Like it was a very, very significant breach.
Yes.
Yeah, it was absolutely remarkable, and I really do pray help is on the way. I'm not as pessimistic, Golan, as Mend. I understand why he is, and I do trust his acumen on this a lot. I trust yours too. And I trust Golan, who is sorely missed today, but we'll be back tomorrow. I trust all your guys' acumen, but I'm not as, I get back to it. I don't judge Trump in the moment. I let the hand play out because for the most part, the hands that have played out under his foreign policy have turned out extremely well. So the quagmire that you guys are talking about, which seems like the way you both described it, there is no way out. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't.
So I think there's a couple of things to consider. First and foremost, the reason that you would include some of the litany of villains that you're including in the Board of Peace at the moment is because otherwise they have a military veto on any decision that your board makes. And so I can see how, as a business person or as a negotiator, it makes sense to bring these people into the room, because otherwise, if you're making decisions and the Egyptians don't like it, they'll just start a war with Israel. They're trying to anyway. Right, the Turks are the same. The Russians aren't trying to, but they like encouraging other people to start wars. So there is a potential rationale for why you would let the litany of villains in the world into the room. The risk is that you achieve the exact same thing the UN has achieved, Nothing. Right? Human Rights Women's Council, which is still led by Iran while they're murdering and raping protesters in the
Well,
streets.
that's what I was sort of saying is you guys have painted this situation to be, and I think that's what we have. Listen, the biggest issue with the with the Iraq war was it was like we were told, Saddam dead. That's it. There was no talk about the years after of that could happen, that might happen, and that actually did happen. And I like that you guys are saying the scenarios of what the possibilities are. So for anybody that thinks a strike in Iran is going to be like peace in Iran, we have no idea whether that's true or not. We don't know what the day after looks like. We don't know what 3 years look like after right now.
But there is logic to doing it. And I know I use the words one and done, and Guy
I agree with you.
rightfully said that there is no one and done. When I'm talking about one and done, I don't care what happens after. I'm talking about getting rid of this regime, or not even getting rid of the regime, getting rid of their ability to threaten their neighbors. That would be the number one goal. Number two goal would be getting rid of their ability to threaten their own citizens. And then number three would be a collapse of the regime. Just like when there's any kind of terrorist attack and Israel responds, and you have all these talking heads on TV going, oh, well, that response is going to create 7 more terrorists. Who cares? The
Well,
bottom line is,
I don't know. Were you on the show when I said the math doesn't add up?
it doesn't add up because they never do it the other way. They never say when a terrorist blows up a bus full of Israelis.
Yeah, he doesn't have 10 kids. It stops him from procreating. It's not like they're giving us the sterile. It's not like
But
they're
they
like,
never
well,
use that argument the other way. They never go, oh, how many Israelis are going to become radicalized because a Palestinian just blew himself up on a bus? None. Never. It never happens. In the history of Israel, I think it's only happened once with Baruch Goldstein. Like, it's never happened. But with these guys, they say it every single time. Oh, you're just creating another generation of terrorists. No, you're not. The guy commits a crime, cause and effect. You commit something, you're going to get killed. Done. End of story. So the same thing goes here. The Iranian government did something. Trump made a statement. Now they need to pay. What happens next? Who cares? Anything is better than what we currently have.
well said. And I want to move on. Well said, both of you. I want to move on to America because I got to tell you, I love Scott Bessent, guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's my hope that we win the midterms. He's one of my sole hopes that the midterms are a plus net gain for Republicans. And I think he's doing an absolutely fantastic job. I think he's probably one of the best messengers that the White House has.
Look, I think he's been fantastic. I heard him speaking today. I heard him speaking today. He's direct. He's serious. He doesn't seem like he entirely lacks empathy, but that doesn't mean that he seems weak. I have nothing bad to say about the guy.
I wish more government officials would be talking the way he does. And it's something that the left does unbelievably well. They come across as compassionate, even as they are doing the most terrible thing. Like Obama, everybody thinks Obama was the most compassionate guy. Under him, 50 US citizens were killed by ICE agents. He was the deporter in chief. He deported more people than Trump did by a mile. And everybody thinks he was the nicest guy because when he would get up there, he wouldn't say the mean things. He would say all the pleasantries, and everybody was like, oh, this is kind of we love the way he talks. Forget about what he does. Nobody cares what he does. How do you speak? How are you speaking in public? Trump comes across very, very brutish and tough, and everybody hates that. The media hates that, and they just run with it.
Well, I mean, I actually don't necessarily. I mean, you mean everybody on the left hates it, not everybody. That's Mag.
Yes.
That's I
I
don't
love it.
hate it.
I think it's great.
I love it, and I think
Yeah.
it's great. I think that's MAGA's greatest thing. But you're right, but Guy, this goes back to messaging, and I know I pissed a lot of people off on when I posted about Christy Nome being a terrible messenger, and I brought it up on the show the other day. But when you listen to Bessent, he has a calm about him. He's extremely confident in what he's doing, and there's a real calm in him. And I wish you can't teach that. I don't think you can teach what Scott Bessent has. So if you can't teach that, replace other people who aren't getting the same messaging across. Because it should be like the Bessent rule right now.
Well, and I think what Bessent does exceptionally well is he tells hard truths with compassion, right? Because I think one of the things that the left tends to do is let compassion override hard truth, right? No, you can't be a boy if you want to. Yeah. The right sometimes let rules by hard truth. So the Donald Trump approach you're talking about is just the hard truth, right? And I think what Bessent does exceptionally well is he doesn't flinch from the hard truths, but he shows enough compassion to make it more like, More like a dad than a drunken uncle.
Right, he is a dad. He is a dad, and he's a very successful dad. And somebody, you are, by the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to the Daily Cheat Sheet, and we are live on Rumble. So for the people that are listening to this later on via audio, come check us out on Rumble too. But somebody in the rants brought up that Bessent should be on more podcasts. Now here's the problem: he's not being invited to the podcast. The pod bros don't want him. The podsphere doesn't want a guy like Scott Bessent on. So this is really the unfortunate deal we made with the devil to get President Trump elected. Yeah, all the former Bernie bros were behind Trump. You had all these podcasters that were behind Trump, and they've all turned on Trump. So Bessent's not, Megyn Kelly's not inviting Scott Bessent on that I've seen. Obviously Tucker Carlson's not inviting Scott Bessent on. So that really, that narrative of getting into the podcast doesn't apply, except for probably one person has the ability to.
But he's part of a group, so that there's almost two separate administrations under Trump, right? You can call them good Trump or bad Trump, or you can call them his angels and his devils, however you want to divide it. But you've got sort of the people who follow his worst instincts in terms of messaging and in terms of, we're going to be in your face and, Ian, it's Vance and it's Noam and it's, there's the people who sort of come out hard and rough and think that being tough is going to work, and they always end up looking horrible because they aren't Donald Trump, right? That is a character that only Donald Trump seems to be able to pull off. And I think part of it is because everybody's known Donald Trump for 40 or 50 years already. And so when he's being tough, you're like, that guy from Saturday Night Live? Okay. You keep being tough, Mr. Trump. And in that way, he's already built the compassion ahead of time. He's allowed to be tough. The people who follow him just look like mean people. And then you've got the people who are acting like grown-ups, right? And that's where you get the Marco Rubios. That's where Karen Levitt is usually on point. That's where Bessent is on point, right? You've got these people who look like the kinds of politicians that we used to actually look up to and think, hey, these people seem like the sorts of people who should be in charge. And I think that's the hope I have for 2028. The hope I have for 2028 is there's a whole bench there that actually looks like they could come off of an episode of The West Wing.
No, I listen, I agree with you 100%. The last thing I want to discuss is men's favorite topic, which is Nick Fuentes. And and you sent that post of the Nazi gay party bus going to a club. It was Nick Fuentes, the esteemed Myron Gaines, and Andrew
Yay.
What?
Sneeko and Ye were there.
It was the weirdest thing I've ever. It was it was, and Andrew Tate, of course. And you, as you pointed out, you have no idea why Trump got Romania to let him go, man. But this is this is one of those things. If you're a parent, I don't know what age demographic is listening or watching these people, but if you're a parent, you got to be on the lookout for these people. These are some of the worst scum in the world. And this is nothing in reference. Forget about the fact that they're Jew haters. They're just awful humans that have massive platforms.
So Byron Gaines, or whatever he is, Andrew Tate, these people are all Muslim Brotherhood pushing propaganda. That's what it all stems from. All roads lead back to Qatar. There we go again. Andrew Tate is a self-described pimp, and his brother, mini pimp, and some
child trafficker. Let's be clear. He's not
child
just
trafficking, yes, abusing
trafficking and beating children.
And you got to wonder why this administration pushed to have him released. He was up on charges in Romania, and this administration had him released. There are some things that these guys are doing where it is in direct opposition to their stated policies. Like if you wanted to bring about peace in the Middle East, you would not be cozying up to the Muslim Brotherhood, Qatar, and Turkey. You wouldn't do that. You would better align yourself with people that are against that, like Egypt and Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. United Arab Emirates is top of my list. I should have said them first. Mm-hmm. Number one, they are the poster child for how the Middle East could look if you got rid of the extremists. And he's not giving them the power. He's giving the power to Qatar and Turkey. Why? Why would he demand that Romania release Andrew Tate when he was up on charges? Now he's here and he's poisoning the minds of our kids. Why? Why would you do that? This Gaines guy, he's a Muslim Brotherhood guy. Investigate him, find out what's going on there, who's funding him, and get to the bottom of that. But we're not seeing that, and I don't understand it. So you could complain all you want about Andrew Tate being a vile human being, but it's this administration that kind of let him off the hook, gave him free
Yeah,
pass
and
to do what
a
he's
lot
doing.
a lot of people have given him a free pass. That's, Guy, that's the rub, isn't it? It is sort of strange that Elon Musk is still allowing the Ayatollah to tweet. Don't you find that sort of, and I get it. I get what the counter argument could be. Like, I don't really get what the counter argument could be. If he's going to be in blackout, if he's going to black out all his people, he should be blacked out because and there is a certain point. We've discussed this on the show quite often. I don't. If you are part of the Muslim Brotherhood or you're shilling for the Muslim Brotherhood, I'm not sure you have a place in the public square.
So I think what you're both talking about is actually very similar, which is a lot of the decisions that this administration has made, and Elon Musk as sort of an early part of the administration and then a distant friend and sometimes foe has been made on partial information and not understanding a situation in its completeness. Right. And I think part of the push for Andrew Tate, for example, you could tell Andrew Tate's story in a way that would make it sympathetic to Donald Trump, who's a person who understands being persecuted by the law. Right. And if you didn't look into it and someone just presented it to you in that particular way, it said, listen, this guy is he's an internet guy. He pissed a lot of people off with the things that he was saying. And now all of a sudden the Romanians have got him up on trumped up charges and he says it's all not true. None of it's true. Right. If you're the president and you have that's the 60 seconds you understand of Andrew Tate, and beyond that you don't know, you say, that's nonsense. They did the same thing to me. They shouldn't be doing that, right? You have to dig deeper to say, oh wait, no, there's actually recordings and evidence, and this is a legitimate thing. The president doesn't have time to do that on an individual case by case basis, and
Oh,
sometimes
without a
what
doubt. You
happens.
know what? I just want to finish that up. It's a great point, man, he's making, because we have no idea who got into his ear to say this. He's
Not
a
when it comes
hundred.
to Tate.
Yeah,
Not when
no,
it comes to
I understand what you're saying. I listen. I think the guy is what I think of what I think of
yeah, I mean,
Andrew Tate. Here's the problem that often happens, and it often happens a lot, is somebody gets in your ear and says, and especially with Trump, guy, it's a really good point, and you're right, not with Tate, but somebody obviously said, it could have been Tucker Carlson for all we know. Hasn't he had Andrew Tate on his show?
he did.
And so whether it was Andrew Tate to
You know,
JD, I mean,
that brings another thing. Why would he be listening to Tucker Carlson? Tucker Carlson is attacking him from the flank
I don't
all
think
the
no.
time. He is
I don't think
attacking
he's.
Trump and Trump policies.
Yeah.
Why is he sitting down with Tucker Carlson? So these things, when these happen, I scratch my head. I go, on some things, this administration gets it so right. They're killing it. They're crushing it. They lock the border, getting rid of all this crime and corruption and all that. Great. Peace. You want to bring peace. You let the Israelis go in and rescue their hostages. You got them out. You let Israel go into Rafah. You gave them the ammunition. You said, go in there and do what you got to do. Great. And then there's this, and then there's Tate, and then there's Qatar, and then there's Turkey. And you're like, how do they get it so wrong on these other things? There's nobody there. Jared Kushner can't tell him Andrew Tate is a vile human being.
No, Jared Kushner has no idea who Andrew Tate is. And again, all I'm going to say to you, I'm going to say to you something right now that you've said to me for months. Okay, that you're the one that I get this from. Let it play out. Okay, let it play out, and we could have this discussion again in a month. We'll be here in a month. Let what's going on right now play out. Okay,
as the Kurds are being slaughtered in Syria, we can let it play out. I mean, that's what we do with our allies. That's what we do with the people that relied on us we relied on them to kill ISIS, and they relied on us to have their backs and protect them, and they are not being protected. Let's let it play out.
Listen, I'm not you.
I know what you're saying, and I agree with you. I'm the one who says that, but there also comes a time where you have to say, what the hell are they doing?
Listen, it's something a lot of us say every day. It's something. Obviously these thoughts cross our minds all the time of what the hell is going on, because 1 + 1 is not adding up to 2, guy. And I want to wrap this up. So your final thought.
So I think just to build on what Mend was saying, but also to sort of wrap it up a little. First of all, sometimes we play it may be that Trump is playing 4-dimensional chess. It may be that he's playing 7-dimensional chess. But at some point, there's time, there's a clock, and there are other players playing the game too. And one of the things that it's really starting to get concerning isn't necessarily that the intentions of the administration aren't good or that they don't necessarily have a plan. It's that the other pieces are moving on the board while they're waiting or while they're thinking. So Syria falling wasn't part of anybody's plan, but Israel reacted within 24 hours to destroy the entire Syrian military from top to bottom. So once al-Jilani had control, there's nothing there. It's an impotent country at the moment, right? The situation with the Kurds is unexpected because the situation with the Kurds in Iran was unexpected, but the Turks seized that opportunity. The Saudis, the Turks, and the Pakistanis are talking about creating a new alliance, which would be an Islamic defense organization or defense alliance
Or
with a
caliphate.
nuclear umbrella. Unprecedented. That's incredibly dangerous. And part of the reason that's happened is because it's taken too long to figure out what it is that the plan is. And so I'm on board with the fact that we have to let it play out, but you got to move. You got to play, right? It's not
Listen,
4D chess, it's 4D speed chess, and we are failing at the speed.
I do not. Sorry,
Oh,
I
sorry.
don't see the Saudi, Turkish, Pakistani defense alliance happening.
Yeah, I know. When I saw that too,
Simple reason.
when I saw that too, I was like, "Whoa!" So because as we're wrapping up, and I really don't want to go too long. It basically because the gist of it is Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Brotherhood are bitter enemies. So
Bitter
that
enemies, and Turkey is the one that exposed the killing of Khashoggi by the Saudis, which cost the Saudis billions, if not trillions of dollars in just when they were deemed a pariah, and they spent so much time and energy coming back from that. Why would they forgive Turkey and make a defense alliance with this country? I don't see it.
We'll save that for another episode, but
yeah, and we'll save.
it's saying it's a consideration that time is moving forward and the situation the situation keeps adapting to the lack of action. And so sometimes a plan which takes time is a problem just because of the time.
Yeah,
Agreed.
100%. You're both correct, and I appreciate both of you on this. I was going to get into Josh Shapiro having to prove that he was not a Mossad agent when he was running.
Why did it take this long for that to come out? So Kamala Harris' team, when they met with Shapiro to interview him about the VP post, they asked him, "Are you a Mossad agent? Do you have dual loyalty to Israel?" Like all the stuff that would be extremely anti-Semitic. Josh Shapiro is a patriot. He's an American. He's a liberal. I don't agree with his policies, but I think he's a good human being. I think he's a good politician. He does what he does well. And that was what they asked. And it took until now, a year into the Trump presidency, to find out that those were the questions they asked him.
Yeah, it is, Guy. It's a little the timing, as we going back to timing, is a little awkward of when he decided to finally bring this up. So listen, I don't think Josh Shapiro will ever be president of the United States. So I would not focus on him. Guy, your final thoughts, since I know you want to say something, we'll shut it down.
No, I was going to say that what I read that they also told him that he'd have to take down a bunch of his previous statements that he'd made about what happened on October 7th. And they expressed that his position on October 7th
Yeah.
was problematic.
Yeah, I
for
mean,
the-
I thought they were going to force him to like recircumcise to
The Muslim way. The Muslim way.
So, I mean, listen, I appreciate everything you both. I learned a lot on this episode. And listen, we're all Trump supporters here. We all want everything to succeed, but we also look at what's going on. And when I listen to a lot of voices on X, a lot of us do, that are sane, that we trust, and we read what they're saying, and that have semi-big accounts or bigger accounts. And a lot of people are in men's camp, and a lot of people are in guys' camp, where 1 + 1 is not adding up to 2 right now. So we have to take into account that a friend of mine often says the Trump base isn't big enough to win things. You need independence.
Yeah.
46% of Americans are registered as independents. And people often forget that number, and it keeps growing. It's been growing and growing and growing, right? And I think it's 28% are Republicans, 27, whatever the percentages are. But Guy, I think people have to get outside the bubble sometimes and listen to what other voices are saying, and I'm talking about within our own party. And I'm not referring to them as rhinos or warhawks or anything like that, just their perspectives. I don't want us to ever be in that bubble either. So I want to thank both of you tremendously. You guys were fantastic. I'm happy you guys finally got to meet. It was a great first date. There will be another one very soon. And on that note, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank David Turbo, everybody in the rants, Dr. Jen, everybody. And David especially, really, thank you for the YouTube shorts. They are awesome. They're really incredible. And so great work. Want to remind everybody you can find us at thedailycheatsheet.com. That's thedailycheatsheet.com. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.